Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric, and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
Today is November 5th, 2023, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming 2023 Mississippi governor election. Um, at first, you may think this is a pretty straightforward race, but it's a bit more contested than you would think. We're going to be talking about what's going on here. We're going to be talking about each candidate, some previous elections that happened in Mississippi, some polls, and then we're going to make our final prediction.
Yep, and we will say this is the first time we're making a video together again. It's been a while. It's a lot in our lives have changed so far, but we're back to bring back the content that we need for this year's prediction. We don't want to miss it. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. So, I'll start off by giving a little bit of background on Mississippi. Obviously, this is a very, very conservative state from the deep South, known for running up high numbers usually for Republican candidates. I believe in 2020, Biden lost this by about 15 or 16 points. But Mississippi does have a very high African American population that does tend to make the electorate a little bit more democratic. But overall, the electorate's very conservative for those living in the state. Now, I will note, however, that in governor elections, it is actually sometimes pretty close. In 2019, Democrats ran a very good candidate. His name was Jim Hood. He was the attorney general of the state. He came within about 6 points of winning against Tate Reeves, which is honestly a massive feat for a Democrat against a Republican in a very conservative state. So this is very interesting. We got to keep this in mind while we make our predictions. With that being said, though, I'll pass it over to Eric now to talk about Tate Reeves and his governorship so far.
Yeah, so as we see here, compared to all the other governors that are also kind of sort of unpopular, Tate Reeves like takes the cake here. Between his approval and disapproval, there's like very little between which is more. It's very split down the middle. He's in pretty unpopular. He takes kind of the top of the list here. He hasn't really been doing much for the people of Mississippi. As we do know, it is one of the more poor states in the nation, and Reeves hasn't really been doing anything out of the ordinary in order to try to curb that. He does stick to a very conservative base, though. As a general overview, he was a staunch Trump supporter. He did support him even after he was in all those lawsuits regarding the 2020 election. He stood by him, and he had very conservative stances on many issues such as birth control, how to spend money, and all of those big issues. So he hasn't really been doing anything to stand out, and especially among all the other governors, he is pretty unpopular. And here, on top of his unpopularity, he's been hit with a lot of scandal. What's going on here is that there's a rumor that, according to one of his workers that was interviewed, it's not really clear because he wouldn't out him directly, but it's alleged that Reeves basically used welfare funds that, again, knowing that Mississippi is such a impoverished nation, impoverished state, a lot of people need that type of funds. And Tate Reeves was accused of using those funds to basically spend on personal stuff, football stadiums, and other personal endeavors that he used public funds for. And obviously, this got an extreme amount of backlash. And Reeves is trying to play it down and denouncing it, as this article says, but the allegations still stand, and it's gotten quite a bit of publicity considering that it's in a state like Mississippi. And that's really not going to help him in this upcoming election.
Yep, for sure. And now heading on to Brandon Presley, who actually is a distant cousin of Elvis Presley. He is honestly a pretty strong candidate to be running for the seat. He is a current member of the Public Service Commission, and I believe he is one of the highest ranking or the highest ranking Democrat in the state. Obviously, it's very hard for a Democrat to get elected in the state. Um, but I will note that he's probably not as good as a candidate as Jim Hood in 2019, because Jim Hood was a statewide elected candidate in as the attorney general, while Brandon Presley is a district elected for the PSC. However, Brandon Presley seems to align pretty well with what the Mississippi electorate is. He's more of a moderate or even conservative Republican. As we can see here, he's a very pro-life candidate, which might create some backlash actually by some Democrats in Mississippi, but overall, it might be more appealing for the independent or Republican voters in the state, which obviously, as we mentioned, tends to be way more conservative than perhaps what its traditional state is. So it's going to be interesting to see how his decision to run a very pro-life campaign might impact this election, given that there are both the side of the conservative Republicans and the more conservative independents, but also Democrats who might be very staunchly pro-choice, especially given the backlash of what's happened. So I think this might play to his benefit, but there is the chance that it could end up depressing turnout among those who might be more staunchly liberal. Looking at the polling here, we have very, very little information, and these polls haven't taken a while ago, and a lot of these are internal polls. Overall, though, it's looking like, what we would expect out of Mississippi. But I think it is a little bit closer than what people might expect, given the fact that Brandon Presley is, I guess some sort of name recognition, given that he's a PSC member, elected official, and he honestly might be the best candidate that the Democrats could put up in general. And this is interesting, of course, because it's a race where you have a Democrat that's probably a good candidate, but then also a Republican who's not a great candidate, given the amount of scandals and the unpopularity that he has. But the question now goes to, will that unpopularity and perhaps name recognition of his opponent really translate to a victory? And this is the updated YAPMS map that we actually just noticed updated. It looks a lot nicer now. I marked in Louisiana because that was determined in an earlier election as the Republican got over a majority. And we will do Mississippi today, and then Kentucky we'll also probably do today and upload a little bit later. So I'll start off with what I think for Mississippi. I think that overall, given Mississippi's conservative lean, it doesn't really matter how good of a candidate the Democrat might be, even if it's a very, very Republican state, even if he's a good candidate. However, I do have to weigh the fact that the Democrat is probably a little bit more viewed more favorably than the Republican is, given the fact that Tate Reeves has a lot of scandals going on. But all of that being said, given that this is a very conservative state, polling does point towards a Tate Reeves, at least favorability. I'm thinking likely Republican on this one. If I would have to guess, maybe somewhere between 7 to 9 points, because I just think overall Mississippi's conservative lean is going to surpass perhaps candidate quality in this case.
Yeah, Lucas, I totally agree here. Spot on with the 7 to 9 margin. I would also put it around there. Also, considering the fact that this election is taking place in a off year where Biden is president. So there's not as much momentum as there would be in like a midterm election per se. And also on top of that, Joe Biden himself isn't also particularly popular, especially in a state like Mississippi. So, his presidency isn't really helping Presley here either. So yeah, it's going to be more contested. Um, Tate Reeves is going through some scandals, but again, the staunch conservative electorate that Lucas talked about, like, can't be won over, even with everything going on. So with that, I totally agree. It's going to be somewhere in the likely range.
Yep, I agree with your point completely, Eric. And I just want to extend on that last point that this is an off-year election in a Biden midterm, and Biden's not is pretty unpopular right now. In 2019, when the Mississippi governor election happened, it was a Trump midterm, and Trump was not favorable at the time. And in 2020, know that he lost. So overall, I don't think that the national environment is going to benefit uh, Brandon Presley here, although they could be more energized after the Dobbs decision. I overall do believe that Tate Reeves will be favored here and he will end up winning. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I know it's been a very long time since we've made this a video. It's been busy, but we're glad you're here for us. And that's it for the video today. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you like our content, please hit subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow. See ya.